That isn't a mother, Chad. That is a mistake dressed in fabric.
On the day my son should have married the woman he loved, her mother leaned across the aisle, voice sharp enough to slice through silk, and announced loudly enough for Dacre to tremble. That isn't a mother, that is a mistake dressed in fabric. Her daughter, the bride, didn't flinch. She laughed, she clapped, like a trained seal applauding at the sight of a fish bucket. But my son, my sweet, loyal, soft-spoken boy, he didn't laugh. He stood, he removed his ring, and he ended the ceremony in front of 200 glittering faces. And the next morning, he did something much larger. Something that would collapse their so-proud fortune like an overfilled balloon and leave their name dripping through the mud of Cedar Falls for years to come. So before we dive into the destruction, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and follow if you love justice served cold. Because this story is revenge aged like wine, chilled like winter, and poured like honey over people who deserved every sip. Back then, I was just Margaret Henderson, the quiet widow who planted flowers and minded her own life. My days revolved around church casseroles, budget-friendly groceries, and deciding whether my porch looked happier with tulips or daffodils. People saw a simple woman, 62, soft-spoken, alone. They never saw the numbers behind the curtain. They never asked about investments blooming like spring. They never imagined a widow tending more than roses. My son Tyler had been dating Jessica Walsh for 8 months, and in that time I'd met her exactly twice. Not for lack of invitation, but because from the moment she smiled at me, my bones whispered, "A storm is coming, prepare." First meeting, Tyler's birthday. Jessica didn't speak to us much. She spoke mostly to her phone, photographing lettuce like it was a celebrity. Between snapshots, she asked rapid-fire questions about my retirement funds, as if determining whether I'd become financial deadweight. Charming like sand in your eye, second meeting, she brought her mother, Patricia. Patricia entered my home the way aristocrats enter charity galas, gracious, but only because cameras exist. Her eyes scanned my furniture the way real estate agents scan foreclosures. Meanwhile, Jessica snooped through my drawers like she expected jewels to roll out. Patricia settled into my late husband's recliner, uninvited, and smiled with manufactured warmth. We value family support structures. Older relatives contribute in small ways, emotional ways. Translation, your decoration, dear, not part of the architecture. I sipped tea and smiled like a woman without claws. Because sometimes the sharpest plan begins with silence. Jessica called, voice sugar-coated, to inform, not include me, that the Walsh estate would be hosting a June wedding. 300 guests, press photographers, social pages. Luxury vendors, then she added, sweet as poison. Of course your side can be small, simpler. The word simpler danced like an insult dipped in gold. I hummed politely, I offered congratulations. And inside me, a switch flipped quietly. Permanently, see, Jessica had researched Tyler. She'd researched my house, my car, my lifestyle. But she never, not once, investigated my maiden name or the family legacy sitting in my portfolio like a crown covered with dust. 3 weeks later, I sat in my accountant's office as he reviewed the fruits of 15 years of silent discipline. Mrs. Henderson, your net worth has reached $3.8 million. I nodded like he'd told me the weather. Inside, I danced barefoot through fireworks. People assumed I lived on widow pension, baked goods, and humility. They never knew how quietly money grows when watered with patience and left undiscussed a plan, a seed. A storm disguised as a blessing. One day they would learn what silence is capable of, and I would be smiling when the lesson arrived. Tyler called that afternoon, upbeat, unaware of the war quietly forming behind my eyes. Mom, Jessica's parents want a proper family dinner, just something casual, nothing too fancy. He said it gently, like fancy might overwhelm me. Sweet boy, he had no idea. It'll be at their estate, he added, as if mentioning the moon. They have money, a lot. If only he knew how much more satisfying wealth feels when nobody suspects you have it. Their mansion appeared like a monument to the idea that wealth is inherited, not earned. A circular driveway wide enough for 3 weddings. Gardens manicured by souls who must have been paid more than teachers. The front door, unbelievably tall, opened like a mouth swallowing visitors whole. Jessica greeted us in a dress that cost more than Tyler's car. She kissed the air near my cheek like I might stain her makeup. Mrs. Henderson, welcome to our home. Her tone suggested she owned the world and had graciously allowed me to step inside it. Inside, crystal chandeliers dripped from ceilings like frozen waterfalls. Floors polished enough to see your sins reflected. Every chair looked wildly more expensive than my entire dining set. Patricia descended the staircase like royalty. Pearls, perfume, a smile sharpened by privilege. Margaret, she cooed as if blessing a peasant, so lovely you could make the trip. I thanked her politely, sweetly, while every cell in my body catalogued their arrogance like inventory. We sat at a table big enough to seat a small parliament, though only 6 chairs were filled. The wine tasted like currency. The steak, imported, aged, worshipped before slaughter. Everything curated to say, we are better. Your presence is tolerated. Patricia and her husband, Gordon, led conversation like conductors. They spoke of European summers, private villas, first-class yachts like they were episodes of a show I lacked the subscription for. I sipped wine, nodded occasionally, looking harmless as lace napkins. Jessica leaned forward, her voice gentle venom. Tyler mentioned you've never traveled much. We'd love to include you when we jet off after the wedding. Include me. Like a rescued stray, I smiled, because my silence wasn't weakness, it was the loading of a weapon they didn't know existed. Then Gordon began educating me loudly about investments. Most people work for wages their whole lives, he said, sipping wine like victory. Money works for those smart enough to use it. He explained compound interest like he'd invented it. Meanwhile, my mind calculated how far ahead my portfolio sat beyond his. But then, Patricia delivered the statement that flipped my kindness into intention. Margaret, dear, don't worry. We don't expect your family to contribute equally. We understand your limitations. Limitations. A word wrapped in velvet, filled with needles. Jessica chimed in quickly, pretending to soften it. Different families have different means. Different means, as in their wealthy were crumbs. I nodded like a woman who accepts crumbs. Inside me, a quiet detonation, a plan forming like lightning behind clouds. They thought humble meant helpless, polite meant poor, widow meant weak, and that mistake, that breathtaking arrogance, would become the cornerstone of their ruin. I folded my hands neatly, voice soft as butter. Perhaps I could pay for the rehearsal dinner. 3 sharp glances, tight smiles. Patricia's tone glimmered with superiority. Oh, sweetheart, we already arranged that. We know these things can be overwhelming financially. I offered flowers. Photography, anything to participate. Each offer declined with the same condescending grace one uses to refuse a child's art project, not because they had it handled, because they believed we had nothing worth contributing. So I made a final suggestion, the one they never should have accepted. Then perhaps a wedding gift, something to help the newlyweds start life well. Jessica lit up like a casino machine hearing coins drop. Oh, that would be lovely. And in that moment, she unknowingly accepted her own destruction, because I would gift my son not dependence, but dynasty. While Patricia showed off art pieces likely purchased for ego more than love, I memorized floor patterns, door frames, roots to weaknesses. Not of the house, of the family. Jessica bragged about wedding plans, floral arches, gold cutlery, orchestras, social column coverage. They wanted status. I wanted silence until it was time. We parted like polite women do, smiling, promising closeness. They thought they had won. I walked out knowing exactly how I'd take everything they valued without raising my voice. Because sometimes the most dangerous woman in the room is the one they mistake for furniture. The morning after that dinner, after their polite insults, their silken arrogance, I woke earlier than usual. Not for gardening, not for baking. For war, I slid my laptop across the kitchen table, brewed a black coffee, and began peeling back the Walsh family like wallpaper. What I found didn't surprise me, but it delighted me. They weren't wealthy, they were maintaining wealth's costume. Their empire was a stage set. Impressive from the front, hollow from behind. The dealerships over-leveraged, 2 restaurants, bleeding money quietly. Rental properties barely afloat. Family fortune mostly myth and debt. They were rich in appearance, but liquidity lacking, cash-dependent, and badly timed for a woman like me. I smiled into my mug, a small, polite smile, the kind Patricia underestimated. Then I dialed Tyler. Mom, they want to move us closer to town after the wedding, he explained softly. Gordon offered me a commission-based role at his dealership. Commission-based, not salary, dependence disguised as opportunity. They wanted to own his future, to keep him grateful, to keep him under their financial thumb. I asked one question, innocent as lace. Has he given you a contract? Not until after the wedding. Of course not. They needed him married first, secured, tied, accessible. My son believed they were opening doors. He didn't know those doors locked from the outside. I knew then what my gift would be, not furniture, not savings. Not a wedding check to earn their approval, but independence and the quiet demolition of the Walsh legacy. That evening I called my financial advisor, Robert. Robert, I need to liquidate $500,000, I said calmly, as if asking for flour. The silence on his end was comically long. Margaret, that's significant. Are you sure? I was beyond sure. I had waited 15 years for a purpose worthy of the harvest. It's time, I said, to build something for my son. He processed the withdrawal. And with those funds, I began forging an inheritance of power. During research, one detail glittered like buried treasure. A shopping center, Gordon owned a portion of it, small but strategic. It was slated to be sold within 8 months to a medical development group. Return projection, X3, minimum, but they needed investors. They needed fast liquidity. They needed someone like me, someone Gordon would never suspect. Someone he believed financially harmless. I contacted lawyers, investment firms, developers, and within days, Henderson Investment Properties was born, Tyler named as successor, shares structured to grow aggressively. My son thought he was marrying into wealth, but in truth, wealth was already growing quietly beneath his own feet. The conference room smelled of leather and paperwork. My attorney, Sarah, slid documents across the table. It's done. Your company is registered. Tyler is majority heir. I traced my finger along his name, not the boy I raised, but the man who'd soon own more than the Walshes ever could. They wanted my son beneath them. I would place him above, so high they'd need binoculars to see him. Patricia reserved the country club like a queen lending out her palace. The dinner was polished elegance, gold cutlery, hushed lighting, conversations dipped in ego. I wore pearls, real, appraised, priceless, but simple enough to be dismissed. Jessica opened my gift, a modest picture frame intentionally plain. She smiled too quickly. Oh, how thoughtful. If she only knew her real gift sat locked in my car. They talked over steak and wine as if speaking from a throne, senior living suggestions for me, retirement costs for me. Limitations always for me. I nodded, I smiled, I blended, because predators hunt attention, but they never watch prey that looks harmless. I left the rehearsal dinner with the same calm I entered, but this time with documents in my purse and an empire poised under their feet like cracking ice. The wedding awaited, the downfall waited also, and I was patient. Silence is the sharpest blade. The morning of the wedding arrived warm, bright, annoyingly perfect. Birdsong, sunlight, a breeze meant for picnics. A day made for vows and poetic justice. I dressed in my modest J.C. Penney blue dress, ironed perfectly, hair pinned simply. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy, nothing that hinted at the storm wrapped neatly inside my purse. In my handbag sat a wedding card containing a $5,000 check, visible, acceptable, believable. Hidden beneath it, folded and quiet, Tyler's real wedding gift, a business framework worth millions. The Walsh estate looked like a magazine cover, flowers exploding from every archway, servers balancing champagne, a string quartet tuning violins like angels lighting cigarettes. Patricia stood center stage, orchestrating vendors with the precision of a general. Margaret, she smiled when she spotted me, how lovely that you're early. We made sure you'd feel included today, included like a side dish. I thanked her because sometimes gratitude sounds like rope, and people gladly wrap themselves in it. He approached me an hour before the ceremony, tux crisp, tie trembling with nerves. Mom, you look beautiful. I cupped his cheek, seeing my little boy inside the man. Jessica is lucky to marry you, I whispered. He hesitated, a shadow behind his eyes. Sometimes I think I'm not good enough for her world. There it was, their success had shrunk him. Their wealth had bent his back, not for long. At 3:45, I took my front row seat, placed carefully where I could be seen but not centered, acknowledged but not valued. The quartet began, guests hushed, phones lifted. Jessica glided across the lawn in a dress that looked like a down payment. Patricia sparkled beside her, dripping pearls like smugness. Everything was perfect until they believed I couldn't hear them. Standing near the gift table, Patricia leaned toward her sister, voice honey-soaked and poisonous. Look at her, she sneered. The poor thing tried so hard, she looks like a mistake in a dress. Her sister snickered. Jessica, in full bridal glow, clapped delighted. Mother, be nice, though she does look like she wandered in from a church bake sale. They laughed loud, careless, cruel, and my son heard them. His face, soft love, turned granite. Confidence slid into his spine like metal poured into mold. He turned, walked to the microphone, and tapped it once. The quartet froze mid-bow. 200 guests went silent, like angels holding breath. Before we begin, Tyler said, I need to clarify something. Jessica smiled, thinking it romantic. Poor girl. Mom, Tyler said, voice steady, you raised me alone. You worked, you sacrificed, you gave me everything. Whispers fluttered through seats like startled birds. And 5 minutes ago, he continued, my bride and her mother called that sacrifice a mistake in a dress. A collective gasp, sharp as broken glass. Jessica paled, Patricia froze, wine glasses trembled in hands. Tyler slid off his wedding ring, placed it gently on the table. I won't marry into cruelty. Ceremony canceled. Gasps became echoes. Camera flashes died. The entire Walsh estate held its breath too tightly. Gordon stormed forward, all bluster and inflated blood pressure. You ungrateful nobody, he roared. We offered you everything. Tyler, finally standing tall, you offered control, not love. And in that perfect silence, I rose. Soft, steady, unshakable, because now came the reveal. I approached the mic with slow grace, grandmother soft, executioner calm. Gordon, I smiled, you misunderstand. You haven't given Tyler anything. He blinked, confused, furious. In fact, I continued, as of this week, Henderson Investment Properties owns your share of the Riverside development. Silence cracked like thunder. Patricia staggered one step. Jessica swayed as if her heels knew what falling felt like. My wedding gift for my son, I announced so gently the words cut deeper, is a company worth more than your entire portfolio. Gordon stared like reality had punched him. You what? I held up a leather folder, the paperwork that changed bloodlines. You assumed I was poor, I said kindly. You mistook calm for weakness. A sin that expensive has consequences. And their bill had just been delivered publicly. The wedding did not end, it dissolved. Guests whispered like wind through broken glass. Chairs scraped. Flowers dripped petals like fallen crowns. Jessica's mascara streaked like ink on a canceled contract. Patricia stood still enough to be mistaken for sculpture. Gordon, red, trembling, followed me out like a storm losing power. He caught up to me near my Honda Civic. The same car he'd judged earlier, now the chariot of his undoing. You can't just say things like that, Gordon hissed through clenched teeth. Business holdings have documentation. I opened my trunk calmly. The portfolio sat there like a guillotine. Good, I handed him the paperwork. Read it. His eyes scanned, then widened. Every page tightened a noose. Property transfer agreements, stake acquisitions, investment mergers, development rights. Tyler named managing partner. This can't be real, he stammered. It's very real, I replied softly. Approximately $2.1 million real. His knees nearly gave. A man who'd spoken to me like I was small now held proof I could buy and sell his future with pocket change. Tyler approached, still in tux, still breathless from truth. Mom, what is this? His voice shook. I opened a second folder, the real wedding gift. Your inheritance, I told him. Henderson Investment Properties is yours. He stared, disbelieving, overwhelmed, shining. You built all this silently? Yes, I placed a hand on his cheek. Because you deserved a life you'd rise into, not a life someone could leash you with. Behind us, Gordon's voice cracked. Margaret, please, we can negotiate. We can work together. Like a man drowning, begging the river to stop rising. I turned, eyes gentle, mercy wrapped in steel. You didn't want partnership. You wanted superiority. And now he stood beneath a woman he once dismissed as limited. She approached, pearls shaking, voice almost human. Margaret, there's been a misunderstanding. I lifted one brow. The misunderstanding, I corrected, was assuming wealth looks loud. Silence. She swallowed hard, pride and fear both bitter. We can fix this, she insisted. We can apologize. Apologies don't rebuild empires, I replied. Their empire wasn't lost because of me. It was lost because they believed kindness meant inferiority. And arrogance has a price always. The following week, phones burned like wildfire. Reporters, real estate agents, investors, social columnists. Is it true? Does Tyler Henderson really own the projects? How did a widow acquire all this? I smiled over breakfast, toast, quiet dignity. By 8 o'clock m, I had 12 calls. By noon, 27. The Walsh name was now whispered, not bragged. Tyler finally called, voice alive with disbelief. Mom, the business managers say this company might be worth over $4 million. 4.2, I corrected gently. Without counting the medical center buyout. He laughed, awe, relief, wind beneath wings that once sagged. I feel like I was blind and you opened the windows. No, I simply waited for the right moment to draw back the curtains. His voice came through the phone, grainy, defeated. Margaret, we're open to selling remaining assets. We can discuss terms. Market value depends heavily, I replied, on how motivated a seller is. Silence, he understood. They needed liquidity. I own leverage. Everything they once lorded over others, now balanced on decisions I would make over tea. Patricia's final attempt at control, she visited, no pearls, no superiority, just shaking hands. Margaret, we were wrong, not remorse, desperation. I hope, I replied, you teach your daughter how expensive humiliation becomes when built on arrogance. Her eyes filled for herself, not for me. But growth rarely comes kindly. The Henderson Investment Group outgrew projections. 7.8 million and climbing, while the Walsh estate stood for sale, windows hollow. Tyler sat across from me in his glass office, confident, shining, unchained. I still don't understand why you stayed silent so long. I smiled, soft, knowing. Because power doesn't need to announce itself. It waits, then arrives. He nodded, a man no longer beneath anyone's approval. Jessica left town with Patricia, a princess with no palace. Gordon sold cars still, but the empire title was gone. They didn't lose to wealth. They lost to the woman they underestimated. Not revenge, not destruction, justice. Because the sweetest triumph isn't crushing those who mocked you, it is succeeding so loudly their words become irrelevant echoes. I began this story as the quiet widow in a simple dress. I end it as the mother who built an empire in silence and watched arrogance collapse like paper.